So is it possible that you'll see like all these guys and then like nobody will be good enough? Or?
We're gonna find the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see that.
Yeah. We have no doubts about that.
Yeah, it's like arena rock. It's all starting now, Dave. Don't touch that dial. You're all beautiful, all thousands and millions and zillions of you and artists on Record Store and ADIKA Live. And tonight, who do I have in the house? We have the lovable, the handsome Dave Kushner over here. You might remember from Velvet Revolver and other stuff, but look at that picture, Dave. Look at that.
Right? So young.
This is the first time for anybody watching right now on this podcast. This is the first time you and I we're talking to each other. And but, well, we were introduced, and I got to give a shout out to Club Soda Kenny.
Yeah, Club Soda.
Yeah, he's the one that hooked us up. He's a good guy, Club Soda.
I love that guy, dude.
He's very serious. He goes, I'm a business man.
Yeah. I was really super intimidated by him when I first met him, which, I mean, you can understand why. But I remember it was like, you know, like when you're a kid and you go to a party or something and you're trying to get like the one person that's ignoring you to like you, you know. It was like that, like, hey Kitty, hey, I'm cool too, you know.
Well, you know, I'll tell you how I met Kenny and all that, but I was like that when I met you. Do you know? Okay, this is my Kushner stalking moments I had. Okay. I was working out at Crunch.
Yeah.
And I saw you there one time. And this is when Velvet Revolver first had the first record out. You guys had your first record out. And I have a picture of the record somewhere. I think I might have a picture, but hey,
I have one.
Do you have it? You have it on vinyl?
Dude, check it out. Look at this.
Oh, whoa! Look at this.
Right? Look, double album.
Oh, hold it up. We're a vinyl show. Let's show that. Wow.
And it's a double album, and it comes with a CD.
Is that the first pressing?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool, Dave.
It's got another one on the other side. Where is it? Right here. Dude, it's weird. It's only like 3 songs. It's got like 3 songs aside. Where is it?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Look at this, Debbie, because I love Velvet Revolver. I have to have that. What songs are on that album?
You've got your Slither. You've got your Fall to Pieces. Fall to Pieces. It's just all the first record. There's no extra stuff on here.
Wow. What a great album that is.
It's not for sale.
Oh, that's cool.
Not for sale.
That's cool. That's like, you know what, man? That's almost, I used to have the original Appetite for Destruction.
Ooh.
With the sticker in it. The decal. I don't know what I did with it. That's worth money, huh? That record. There was the girl, right?
Yeah. Well, because they stopped pressing that one. The one with the girl, the Robert Williams painting, and then they put the cross on there.
You went to Fairfax, right? Fairfax High?
I did.
Steven Adler and Slash and those guys?
Yeah. They had they used to, Fairfax was great because they had this like little, it's not an amphitheater really, but it was kind of a little step up concrete, almost like an amphitheater, but in the quad, and they would let bands play. So like Slash's band, he had this trio called Titus Sloan, and like Tracy Guns went there. So he had, I forget his band's name, and like all these bands would play like at lunchtime. It was awesome.
I was in LA Guns for a short time.
You were?
I was. Yeah, I was like the 100th bass player. Oh. It's like, you know, everybody watching out there, thank you for being in the chat and share this out with your friends. Let's get it out, the word on the street. Really quick, this is the first time we're talking, but here's a true story. Dave and I almost playing the band. He doesn't even know it. There was a moment when I was playing with Dee Dee and Duff had loaded, and I was talking to you on the phone about this, and Duff I think he went to Seattle or what, and he was just finished school. Then he was coming back into LA, and he was living somewhere by by Fairfax, down by the Grove over there. He was renting a place. He just moved back. You know, you could tell I'm not lying because I know the stories. You know, I mean, Duff will see me now. He won't. Who's this guy? But no, true story. And I remember him, and I got McBob was, you know, sidelining because I was playing, you know, on other gigs, and McBob would be teching. And McBob goes, listen, maggot, you'll be great. You'll be great in this, maggot. I'm going to put the words. So he gave me the cassette loaded. Right. And I learned all the songs, so I knew it already. So I was like cocky. Then Duff comes to my house with the cassette, with the CD of Loaded. I act like I didn't know it. He was calling, he was friendly, but then me and my Jewish stupid mouth, I could have been a contender. I could have been in Loaded with you. I priced myself too much. I want $200 a week. And that was the end of that relationship. Duff never called me. But Duff, if you are watching and you're, you know, stalking me, I'm sorry. I'm a good guy. Yeah,
you are. I can vouch for you. Anyone that knows Kenny.
Anybody knows
Kenny. Because McBob is like kind of the same type of dude. You know, like you want his approval. You know, he works for you, but you want his approval. You know, like I remember I was telling this story yesterday because I did this podcast. But, you know, they were filming it and they were here in my studio, and I had they were going through my guitars, and I had my own signature model when I was in Velvet Revolver. And I remember I was talking about, it had regular pickups, and then I put EMGs in it where you need like a battery, and and McBob was like, oh, Christ. Oh, Jesus Christ, Dave. What the hell is this? You don't need a fucking battery in here? God damn it. Why don't you just use regular pickups? He's all mad.
He was all mad. I mean, he's a big thing behind Duff's bass, his stuff, his tone and everything. McBob is the guy that gets stuff done. He's one of the greatest.
He's also the guy that announces all the shows.
That's crazy.
I don't know if people know that, but like he's the guy that goes, he used to do it for Velvet Revolver too, but he does it for Guns N' Roses like before and after Velvet Revolver.
Wow.
But when they're about to come out, he used to say to us, he'd say like, Cleveland, you wanted the best, but they couldn't make it. So here's what you get from Hollywood, Velvet Revolver. He has like 10 of them that he just like recycles on different nights.
Bologna! Of all the bands in the world, this is definitely one of them. From Hollywood, Velvet Revolver!
So then when Velvet Revolver later on came out, I remember bumping in the mat in the street because, yeah, man, you know, we just kind of this deal. Hey, man, I should just be I just stand up. The hell with all this.
Voiceover actor,
you know. But
you got the whole setup for it.
I'm professional. But man, it was a great time. And that first record, let's go talk. It's your story because before that you're in Electric Love House. You're doing the whole LA scene. You went to school with those guys. Let's go back a little bit now. You knew the Cats. You went to school with those guys, with Steven, with Slash, and you know everybody in Fairfax. What a crazy scene. Right before, so you were jamming with Duff's band Loaded, but pre-Velvet Revolver, right? You were jamming with him, helping them a little bit because one guy was left. So you're like the utility guy, basically. You're like, oh yeah, I'll come and play a little bit, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I had done this gig in Japan, and that's where I met Duff because he and I didn't know each other. I knew Slash forever. I even knew Matt before, but I never.
You did the Japan with Loaded in Japan?
No, this was some other band with Joey Castillo and just this kind of group of American, and it's a long story, but American. It was called Zilch, and it was this dude Hide that was in this band X Japan that was really big and like the biggest rock band in Japan. Anyway, it's a complicated story, but I was in Japan and I met Duff and we became friends just because we were like two guys that weren't drinking, you know, at the time, and we were playing this show and we just got along. And, you know, obviously like you know, we knew a lot of the same people and we started telling stories and all this stuff. And it was funny because Duff and I at first just became friends because we just got along and had nothing to do with music. You know, like he was going between LA and Seattle, you know, and we would just like, I mean, it sounds so goofy, but it was like we would go to the movies together. You know, we would just like go to eat, and you know, or we would go hang out, and he'd be like, dude, because he's an avid reader, you know, and he would say, oh, there's this movie coming out called Black Hawk Down, and I read the book, and it's really amazing, and we should go check out the movie. I heard it's pretty good. And then we go to the movies, and so we became friends that way. And then the two guys that were in Loaded left, and I think that's when he was talking to you. And then he, you know, since we were hanging out all the time, he's like, hey, you want to play, you know, in Loaded, and we'll play some gigs, and it'll be fun. And so I did that for a while, and really what happened was I had just gotten Logic, you know, like Pro Tools, like Logic. And I had this computer, and I was writing all these songs by myself, you know, like with a drum machine and playing guitar and bass. And I had met Mikey Fitz from Fitz in the Tantrums, because he played at the Viper Room. I started writing. I was like, dude, you're awesome. And he's like, oh, thanks. And I said, you want to sing on these things? He was like, yeah, cool. And so we wrote a handful of songs. Duff heard them. Duff loved them. Duff's like, let's start a band. So it was me, Mikey Fitz, Duff, and again, Joey from Queens.
Oh, wow. And
we were recording these songs at Rumbo, where they did the GNR record. And thanks, Debbie. And dude, so Velvet Revolver was, you know, there was this benefit for Randy Castillo, right? The drummer from Ozzy.
I remembered it, yeah.
And I was with Duff in this diner called Swingers. And I remember Matt used to live around the corner, Sorm. And Matt Sorm, just total coincidence, dude. Me and Duff are in there eating lunch. Matt comes in. He's like, hey, man, you know, Randy Castillo died. And, you know, we're going to throw this benefit for him. And, you know, we're going to, you know, we should jam, and we'll blah, 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 blah. And, you know, and Duff's like, okay, cool. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to Duff. And, dude, so that's the first time that Duff / and Matt had played together in a long time. And they played with Josh and Keith from Buck Cherry.
Okay.
And so, and at the same time, me and Duff are in the studio making this, you know, recording these songs with Fitz. And so I'm like, you know, I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to be so cool. Like, you know, you're in a band, and like, you know, we got these cool songs, and dude, and then like a week later, Duff calls me. He's like, oh, dude, you know what? I got some bad news. Like, I really got to see this thing through with Slash and Matt and kind of check it out, because it's kind of a vibe, and we haven't played together in so long, and it feels really good. And so, you know, I don't think I'm going to have time to do that thing. And I was like, so bummed, so crushed.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And that was it, man. And then, but I was still talking to him all the time. And, you know, like a month later, he's like, oh, I think we're going to, you know, part ways with Josh, you know, Todd from Buck Cherry, the singer. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, oh, I think we're going to get rid of Keith too, because it just doesn't feel right. You know, I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, you should learn these songs. They had recorded like 8 songs. He's like, you should learn these songs, and then you come down like next week. I said, okay, cool. And then the next day he calls me and he says, dude, I couldn't take it anymore. I fired Keith, and, you know, or I told him he was done, and, you know, now you should come down tomorrow. So I had like a day to learn these songs. I'm freaking out.
How many songs did they throw at you?
8.
8 songs.
Plus a couple GNR songs. They're like, why don't you learn a couple, like, you know, just a jam? And I was like, okay. And so, I mean, the bottom line is I just went down. I brought my little pedal board. You know, I had my thing that I did, and it worked. And at the end of it, I, you know, was about to, I like went down to like get my pedal board and put it back, you know, in the case and leave. And they're like, no, just leave your pedal board. You know, why don't you come back tomorrow? I was like, okay. You know, and dude, for months, it was never like, you're in the band. It just was like, all right, well, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna do it tomorrow again. Okay, cool. And then we did it, you know, I mean, I think it was like 6 months of playing 5 days a week before, it was really like you're in the band. Even though there wasn't really a band, that was a weird thing.
But those guys, you guys, Velvet Revolver, they were workhorses, like just before Scott Weiland, but just you guys as a band writing the music. They were just, you could see why Guns N' Roses, their work ethic, basically.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. And I learned a lot from Duff and Slash as far as, work ethics and integrity, as far as like, at that point they said, we're basically have this room locked out and we're going to rehearse here from 2 to 6 Monday through Friday from here on out.
Which you guys are at Mates.
Yeah. And we wrote like 60 songs in 10 months. We had this big dry erase board and McBob was there, we'd come up with these stupid names for the songs because none of them have vocals. So we just come up with these dumb names. And then we started looking for singers.
How was the writing when those guys write, as a group, because Slash, as he's the riff guy, and back in the day when Guns N' Roses, you always heard Izzy would try, with his Stonesy, the way he wrote, and then you had Slash because it was such a crazy mix when you got when you think about the formula of Guns N' Roses, you got the punk, you got the rock and roll, then you got the hard rock stuff, like the UFO, the Michael Shank, all that stuff. But how were you guys writing it? Who would come with the main riffs, or was it through jams? Yeah,
I mean, like I said, we were there 5 days a week, dude, for 10 months, and sometimes it would be, someone coming in with a riff. When Slash came in, he came in with like Fall to Pieces, like he had that bling, and then we would just start playing it, and then someone would go to another part and would be like, nah, but usually it was pretty kind of like that. Like it really just someone naturally felt like, oh, I'm gonna go to this part, and it would work, and then we would record it live and just kind of document it. Sometimes we'd come back to rework that song more, or but it was really all over the place. I remember that first single, Set Me Free, before Slither, that we did for the Hulk soundtrack. I remember because in the room in Mates, we weren't in the big room, right? We were, because Mates, we were in one of the smaller rooms, and there's just basically, it's just a room, there's no stage, and there's a couch. And so you'd be sitting on the couch like this, and I remember me and Duff and Slash were all sitting on the couch like this, and Matt's like, hey man, I got this thing, and he just like grabbed Duff's bass and he's standing in front of us like this, hey man, check this out. And he's like, and he started playing the riff, and he's like, on bass, and we were like, oh, okay. And that became Set Me Free. Or
it's funny.
Or I would come in with, I wrote this song that I ended up using later for this other project, but like I brought in a song and I would just bring in riffs, and everyone would just either bring in a riff or a part, or maybe like even when we did the second record and I did like I had that song Get Out the Door, I had recorded it, I demoed like the whole thing in my room. I was like played guitar and programmed drum machine, and then I brought that in like almost like a finished song. And so it was all over the place, but it was really it was a little intimidating though, because when Duff and Slash write, they have a tendency, like everyone's standing here, in the room, drummer's here, and it's like Slash, me and Duff. But when Slash would start with a riff, they would kind of slowly go like this to Matt. So it's like I'd be the guy like on the outside, like, hey, what do when are you playing over there? You know, how does that go? You know,
yeah.
Naturally, like kind of just play with Matt because that's how he always wrote. And I would be kind of like, you know, the little kid, like trying to look over the fence.
Yeah,
like,
to see the hands, what position are you in, the G or
and
the
it was funny because they played together for so long, dude. Matt and Duff and Slash really would like pick up things quickly from each other. That's funny. I'm like way more like you know, I'm like Salieri in Amadeus. Like Amadeus is the guy that writes shit in his head and everything's easy. And I'm like, you know, Salieri where I'm like, wait, what? And then I got to play it like, you know, for a fucking half hour before it feels comfortable. And so, you know, it was, you know, I just had to, I would talk to other buddies of mine, you know, that I had these two buddies, Scott and Brian, that had gotten we'd all used to go to Johnny Rockets and none of us had a gig and we'd all just hang out and, you know, bullshit and eat. And then Brian got the Paul McCartney gig, Brian Ray.
Yeah.
And then Scott, who was the best man at my wedding, got the Weezer gig. He plays bass in Weezer. And then I got in Velvet Revolver, and we would all like talk to each other, you know.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Slash didn't talk to me today, and I think maybe I'm gonna get fired. Or I don't
so
know.
Stressful because you want this to work.
Yeah.
You want it to work.
Especially, you know, dude, especially if you haven't had that thing before. Like, and also there's something psychologically in your head where you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know, always. Like, you know, especially and I know up until that point, I mean, I was 35 when that happened, and it was just always like you'd get so close and then it's like something would happen. Like someone dies or the record guy who signed you goes to another record company and now they don't want anything to do with your record or
and it's so because you know, when I was doing the Dee gig, I thought everything was great. We were going to do a record together. We were going to write together. I'm here with the guy who started the Ramones, who wrote most of the songs, came up with the name. When everybody wanted to be my friend. Everybody. When he died, all I had was the Cat Club gig with Slim Jim, and I had nothing. I was like, nobody. The phone stopped ringing. I all the gigs, and I was like, oh, that felt the flame. So a gig like you're in, you know, especially you want to be creative. You go, hey, am I giving them too many ideas? Am I annoying them? Am I you know, you don't want to, you know what I mean?
You're constantly second guessing yourself, you know, like, is this, do I wear the right shirt? No, not that bad. But, you know, like you're really like, it's stressful, man. And you know, the worst was after about 3 months, and mind you, this whole time we're looking for singers, right? We would try it. Sometimes a guy would come down, like, or sometimes we would go, like, I remember we went and met with Sebastian Bach, and he was doing Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical, like a small version of it. And we went and saw him, and I had never met him, and me and Duff went to dinner with him, and he's just like, you know, you know how he is, and it's like he's always like that. He's always on. He's always like, hey man,
like a little kid, hyper.
Yeah, and so, you know, and then we recorded a couple songs with him, and we were like, oh, this is cool. But then we were like, is it? Like, I don't know, you know. And that's the thing I was going to say about, you know, when I say I learned a certain amount of kind of integrity, I saw an example of a certain kind of integrity with Duff and Slash, where even though they were paying for that room, you know, because we didn't have a deal or anything, so those guys were paying for this out of pocket for 10 months, you know, and they just never settled. You know, there was times where, you know, after 6 months, dude, we were getting frustrated, and you know, there was a couple guys that were close, and we're like, maybe we should just, you know, in my mind, I'm like, let's just get a guy and let's go.
But you're not working. You didn't.
I worked at me.
That's right. That's what I want to show the audience. It's not like you're coming from a big record deal from the bands you were in. You know, you got your deals, and you were not in the Guns N' Roses before, so you got nothing really to hold you over. But you need to get a job at the same time working with these guys. But you don't want to lose the spot here. This could be my ticket to something really good, but you don't know. You know, you're at the table gambling. So Bobby, who's if you see this, Bobby's a great guy from Mates, but he helped you out, huh?
Yeah, Bobby was like, I remember because I would talk to Bobby. I'd known him for years, and he's like, he's like, you can talk to him about anything, and I would say like, dude, like kind of behind the scenes, like, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do though, because like, I got no money. I had like $200 in the bank. I'm like, I used to do, and then he's like, well, why don't you come work for me? You can work in the morning, because Jimmy, that was doing all the cartage, was doing a build out for the storage place, and then he had room for cartage. So he's like, you come here at, I don't know, 8 in the morning and do cartage till 1:30, and then you can go to rehearsal. And I was like, all right, I'll fucking do it.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, I was making $13 an hour, and it was really humbling because a lot of the dudes that I was doing cartage for were guys I had played with. It was like I was doing the first gig, dude, I had to do was for Queens of the Stone Age. So It was like, Troy and Joey, this guy had been like 5 bands with, and I'm like, oh, where do you want yeah, light cases, and and I'm just, it was humbling, and then I'd get off work, and then I'd just be there already, and I'd rehearse, or McBob and all the techs like Adam Day and those guys were
yeah,
we're doing a truck dump, tonight at 6 o'clock, if you want $60 cash. I'm like, oh yeah, all right, cool.
So you'd be playing with the guys, Rockstar, and then I'll put it up. Okay, let's do the dump. Come on, move it over there, maggot.
Yeah, totally.
like that.
Yeah,
that is fun. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so much so that the funny thing, because I've always had that kind of working man mentality.
Yeah.
And I remember in Velvet Revolver, when we first started going on tour, and my tendency is, the way my brain's wired, is to still help push crates around after the gig.
Yeah.
Because I would be backstage, and I'd see McBob and Adam like pushing crates, and I had pushed a lot of flight cases with those guys. And I think it was either McBob or his brother Tom, who sounds just like him.
Just like him, yeah.
And Tom was our production guy. It was Tom, and because Tom would do the truck dumps too, and I was pushing this crate. He's like, "Oh no, back up, little fighter. You're on the other team now. You don't want to hurt the money makers. Go play with your little band guys now." I was like,
funny. That's funny. So you stepped up. Yeah, no, I get it, man. I thought, because you feel guilty, like you don't feel like I'm not to hang out with this crew. It's like a weird thing. How many singers did you guys go through with Velvet Revolver? I mean, look for on the search, because while you were doing that, there was a documentary being made too.
Yeah.
So while you're learning the songs, jamming, writing with them, you're painting in a paint suit, which we were talking about. You're doing like the work around the studio, hammering, sweating, and then you're like, all right. And Duff probably said, God, you're great. You're the first one here all the time. We love you.
Yeah, totally, dude. Well, he knew, they all knew, like I was fucking working there. And it was, I don't know. It was crazy. Singers. I mean, dude, if you watch the documentary, it's like at one point, like we kind of looked on our own, like, hey, do you know a guy? Yeah. Oh, what about this guy? What about that guy? And it just none of them worked. And at one point, like, because we had all those songs, we recorded like 3 songs, and we were like, oh, these 3 songs are cool. They're kind of a vibe. They fit with each other. So we would, if we heard someone and we knew like they might, work, but then we couldn't find anyone. And then at one point they announced it on KLOS, which is like the rock station in LA. And they're like, they're looking for, these 4 guys / got some guys together, and, and they had a PO box, and we would get these boxes full of fucking submissions. Like,
wow.
McBob would go and he would bring like 2 boxes a week, and there was like, probably 100 a week, and we would
how could you listen to them all? How could you?
They see it in the documentary. We like all sit in a row, and there was a like a mobile Slash had this thing with like a CD player and some other player and a power amp and 2 speakers, and he would just set it up, and that's what we would record the demos on when we would record live. And one of us would take the thing out of take the package out and open it and hand the CD to one guy, and then the other guy would get like the story, or like a picture and be like, my name is so and so and I live in blah blah blah. Or sometimes they send videos and we'd sit, and sometimes we didn't even play, for 4 hours. We'd just be going through people and just be like, oh my God, so bad. And then we found a guy, and we found a couple people that way. And, then we all vote like on who has to be the one that goes and tells them, thank you. That tells them like, you're not the guy, like, oh dude, I did it last time. And be like, oh, okay. Hey man, how's it going? And so, and then it just kept going, dude, for months. And eventually we got Scott. Well, we were working with these 2 managers.
Yeah.
And they so young. And they said, hey, we heard Scott's out of STP, and Duff's wife was friends with Mary, who was Scott's wife at the time. And they ended up hanging out and talking and, kind of floating the idea. And actually I used to work out at Crunch where you saw me, and so did Scott. So I would see Scott, and I knew him from way back in the day. And I remember giving him a demo, at Crunch, the locker room. I'm like, dude, here's the demo, blah, blah, blah. He was like, okay, cool. And then, he sang, dude, the first song he sent back was that song, Set Me Free, that I was saying that Matt wrote on the bass. And
Matt got him.
Yeah. Hey man.
He was all dressed up, Matt, probably all Gucci. Out, hey man. Like, little, hey,
and
man.
And he dude, and it was like, this is the guy, like it was just, he's the whole package,
Yeah.
And we just were like, okay, let's fucking do it.
The first record, everybody's getting along. There's no drama with everybody. The whole thing with Velvet Revolver.
Everyone was getting along, but there was still drama. Like, I mean, Scott, from the get-go, we knew Scott was kind of fucked up, and he had kind of talked about like wanting to be sober. And so we were like, okay, well, we can help you. 'Cause all 4 of us were not drinking or doing anything at the time. And we're like, all right, cool. Well, we'll totally help you, and so then like 2 weeks later, he got arrested. This was like 2 weeks after he, was in the band.
Wow.
So the band was like 2 weeks old, basically. He gets arrested with drugs. Then like Duff goes to his court appearance, and it was just like right from the start, dude, like a episode of Behind the Music on VH1 for 6 years. It's like
everything that you watch now, you're living it, but actually now, but you're worried probably, because I would be if it was, this is the band. This could be my golden ticket. This guy's going to screw it up for me now. It's like, oh.
Yeah. And, at the same time, it was like any money. I mean, the good news is like, anytime I got a check, I was like, that was my thinking. So I was like, just save it. Just put it away, and I did that the whole time. I was like, this could end tomorrow, for a number of reasons. So, but yeah, it was always something, it's like he went to rehab, and then he came out, and then we're getting ready to make a record, and then he'd disappear, and then, it just was like that the whole time, to be honest. Like there was, and then like this guy fell off the wagon, and then that guy fell off the wagon, and now it's that guy, and now it's this, and then it was always something.
How many years the whole bit you're dealing with this now, from the beginning to the end? Did you guys
6
6 years?
6 years.
So 6 years of just banging your head, like, because you're like, God.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It was gnarly.
So they went from Axel, the old Axel, or whatever,
Yeah.
because and now they got this guy who they're thinking, oh,
Yeah.
I guess the best lead singers are all a little eccentric and nutty, but
Yeah. I mean, and it was unfortunate because towards the end it really kind of got a little more like I think a little bit like what I mean, I only know stories from those guys on the bus and everything, and just from knowing those guys as far as what GNR was like. But it was unfortunate because like towards the end, it got very segregated, and it's like we would be the four of us are on one bus and Scott's on another bus with his assistant, and it kind of became like this mini version of what those guys were dealing with on a extremely bigger level when they were playing like stadiums and Chile or whatever. But like he would show up late and we would be pissed, and he wouldn't apologize, and he would just walk in and kind of ignore everyone, and he was so late, it'd be like 45 minutes late, and the crowd where it was just like the same stories, dude, that I heard from those guys. It's like, but in smaller venues, and we're sitting in a venue, we're like, fuck, where is he, dude? We're calling, and the assistant's like, oh, he's in the shower, and we're like, well, what the fuck, dude? Talk about stress, dude. That guy, the assistant, whoever it was, trying to be like, dude, where you got to get him to the venue right now. And the tour manager's yelling at him. And, we're like, what the fuck? And he's like, trying to tell Scott, like, hey, and then Scott's like, oh, fucking do it. So, yeah, but it'd show up 45 minutes late, and he'd walk in with his sunglasses on and his whole, like he looked in those pictures, and he would just walk in, and because we were so late, and we would be there like listening to people booing for 20 minutes, and it was hard, you're just like, oh God. And now we have to go out and face these, I don't know, fucking 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people that are all booing you, and again, I'm, like, I know these are just people like me and you, or like people listening, where it's like you buy your ticket 3 months in advance and you get a babysitter, and you're like out for the night, or you call your mother-in-law to come watch your kid, and you're like, I'm going to kind of escape my life for a night. I'm going to get to see, those guys, and I love that record. And then they're fucking late, and you're like irritated, and you're standing there for fucking, so anyways, he would show up, and he'd come in, and he'd like wouldn't talk to anyone, and he'd just put his in-ears on, and then we'd go on stage. And then, we just grow resentful, and we're like, that motherfucker. And he would never, the show was over, talk for 5 minutes like nothing happened, and then he'd leave. And then, so it just really separated the band, which was
everybody was shutting down at some point, individually in their own way.
And that's why we started talking about firing him, and that's what eventually happened, because we were all, the four of us are on the same bus, and we're just like, man, this sucks, we can't fucking do this anymore. So,
did you guys have separate managers, like the Velvet, did he have his own manager, or it was all?
At first we didn't. We all had the same. We had two managers, and they worked under a parent manager. And then we split, and then there was a point where the one of the two managers, this woman that had been with us the whole time, we felt was a little more kind of focused on Scott, because he was just so, so much to deal with.
He needed a babysitter.
Yeah, but she would like kind of make excuses for him, and she would kind of say one thing to us and one thing to him, and she would be like, oh, I'll take care of it. And then she wouldn't say, she'd leave out information to him. And so it just felt like,
she's being a pacifier to everybody, basically.
Yeah, it just felt like it wasn't helping, at that point. And so the four of us ended up going with someone else, and then he stayed with her. So at the end we had separate managers, but not like everybody individually or anything.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you have a great singer. You have your chance. You're probably panicking. Now you're not spending any of the money at this point, huh? You're putting it away.
Yeah.
At this point, you're like not touching anything.
Totally.
You know, it's crazy. Because that point when he went and did his solo band, a buddy of mine ended up being his bass player. I remember talking to him, and I was doing something. Maybe I was doing a gig with Dizzy Reed there, with Slim Jim, and then I was like, oh man, it's cool you're playing with Scott, because I just, great. I go, great. They're hard to find great frontmen out there, really hard. And then we talked about, I go, yeah, doing this. I go, and he says about Dee Dee Ramone. I go, yeah, all my eggs were in that basket. And when the gig ended, I was like in the dust. There was nothing happening anymore. And then he actually, and Dee Dee died of a heroin overdose, but Dee Dee was sober all those years. He just checked out. And the crazy thing is, right before Dee Dee passed away, Duff, there was something in a park, and Duff showed up there, and Duff wanted to meet Dee Dee. And I go, oh, he should be here soon. But then Dee Dee, left or something. But it was like a week later, he died, Dee Dee Ramone. But and I remember telling Tom, he goes, yeah. And Tom goes, yeah, Scott has his situations. I'm just hoping he gets okay, and blah, 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 blah. But it ended up like Dee Dee. Yeah. And it's just.
What's crazy was full circle back to Joey Castillo, the drummer, because Joey and I also played in like Danzig together. We played in a bunch of bands together, and he actually introduced me and my wife.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he's like one of my best friends. And he was playing with Scott, and at that time, because he had talked to our old manager, I think this guy Rick Canny, maybe it was Rick, I don't know who it was.
I know Rick Canny, yeah.
I think Rick was dealing with their band or somehow, I don't know, but somehow Joey, I remember Joey calling me. He's like, dude, well, should I do this gig? Like, what do you think's going to happen? And I kind of said what you said, like, don't put all your eggs in this basket, but I mean, the guy's fucking talented. If you're not doing anything right now, play with them, but just don't, have these illusions, high hopes, grandeur that it could end any day. That's the truth. It could just all be over in a second. He's like, all right, cool. So he started playing with him. He was actually the second guy that found him on the bus when he died, because they had a day off. They canceled the show. The tour manager said to Joey, like, let's go get something to eat. And Weiland, I mean, he did this on his own bus too in Velvet Revolver, where, a lot of the tour buses, the back lounge can be converted into like a bedroom. So Scott was always in the back, and then usually you get to a city, and then the tour manager comes in and wakes you up, and you go into your hotel room. A lot of times Scott would just like to sleep in there. So Scott was in the bus because he was still sleeping. The tour manager was like, all right, Joey, well, let's meet in the lobby, in like 10 minutes. He's like, all right, cool. And then he said, oh, I'm going to go check on Scott real quick. And then that's when he found Scott. And he called Joey, like freaking out. He's like, dude, he's fucking, I don't think he's, he's not breathing. I don't think he's fucking, I don't know what's going on. And I remember Joey like ran down there and tried to fucking do CPR, whatever, and and then I remember Duff calling me that night, and he's like, dude, Weiland died. And I was like, oh shit. And he's like, yeah, Joey was, and I remember I kept calling Joey, but he wasn't answering because he was, he had to sit there and talk to the cops, like Tommy did, and for hours. They just
that was a rough time. That was and poor Tommy, he got then he's in TMZ, his picture. And then it's like, you don't know the story. You don't, there's a picture of you guys together. And I mean,
giving me the sweet eyes. I'm giving it sweet eyes too, though.
Great frontman, you know what I mean? Great dresser. He had it all. He had the tone of David Bowie in his voice at times. He really just
he was great.
He was a great frontman. when you guys fired him, did he try to say, "Hey, I'm okay, I could come back"? Did he try to come back?
No, he actually ended up going back to SCP again. And what happened was, I think that we had heard rumblings of him meeting with, I think it was that manager that kind of set up, helped facilitate, maybe them reuniting. And I remember, I mean, granted, this is all 12, 13 years ago now, 14 years ago. So some of it may be incorrect from my memory, but from what I remember, she was kind of involved in that a little bit. And then we found out though, and then we said to him, like, what's up, dude? Like, and he was like, it'll be cool. It's like, I can go play with you guys, and then when we're not doing something, I'll go play with them, and then blah, blah, blah. And we were kind of like, well, you're barely showing up here. How are you going to show up with 2 fucking bands? And so as soon as we fired him, he just went and did SCP.
Yeah, he did that. And then
kind of like we did with him, vice versa. Like when we found out he was done with SCP, we were like, hey, you want to go play with us? And he's like, okay.
What about singers? Did you try people out afterwards? And
yeah, we did try out a handful of guys. We had talked to Royston Langdon from Space Hog.
Space Hog, yeah. Love
that fucking guy. We recorded a couple things with him. There's this guy, God, I'm just drawing a blank.
Because he plays bass too, Royston, right? Doesn't he play bass?
Yeah. He's a killer bass player.
Yeah.
The guitar player from Big Wreck, Ian Thornley, he's the singer he's got an incredible voice, sounds a lot like Chris Cornell. And that didn't quite work. But yeah, we talked to Lenny Kravitz for a second.
Really?
Yeah, it never really got that close. You know, it was more like our agent was talking, being like middlemanning, the whole thing. And
it wasn't like Slash calling him up, go, hey man, no.
It was like, hey, he seems interested. And then we're like, oh, we're interested too. And then, someone was like, oh, I don't know. And it was just like, it was like that a lot, and again, I feel like we had an easier and better variety to pick through, now that we had a name and everything, than from when we were starting, but it was just as hard.
It was just as hard starting over again.
Yeah, we wrote songs like what we knew to do, and we recorded them, and we actually, so then eventually we got this dude Frankie Perez, who we heard of through I forget the manager guy that used to manage David Lee Roth and the Black Crowes, and we met with Frankie. Oh no, we did the same thing. We had demos, we had these 5 songs, no vocals. We sent them to Frankie. We got them back, and they were fucking incredible. They were amazing. We're like, oh, this is the guy. He was in Vegas. He came down from Vegas. He sang them in the room, and he sounded like exactly like the demos. And he sang the old stuff killer. And we were like, oh, this is the guy. And then he worked with Matt and recorded some more stuff, and him and Matt just kind of butted heads. And the second round of demos weren't quite as good as the first ones. And then it just kind of slowly went like this.
Yeah.
And it was, which was fucked. And so,
Frankie's one of those guys, you'd see him all the time do his all-star jams, and all the all-stars would use Frankie in the jam. I remember at the Vibrant Jam all the time. He'd be the guy in town.
He's incredible, dude.
Great singer.
Really good friend of mine. He ended up moving here right by my house because he thought he had the gig. He lived in this tiny apartment, and no one was really letting him know that he didn't have the gig. And I felt so bad for him, because I was kind of like I was that guy, you know, in Velvet Revolver in the beginning. And I just called him and I said, dude, you know, I don't think it's going to happen. I know no one's telling you. But I'm just going to fucking, you know, tell you, like, they didn't tell me to tell you, but I'm telling you so that you're not sitting around like hoping that's going to work out. Cause he's like, yeah, I called, I haven't heard back from anyone. I'm like,
yeah,
I just gave it to him straight. And then we kind of bonded, you know, because of that. Cause he, you know, and so then he and I ended up writing a lot of stuff because he would ride his bike over. I just had my first kid. I had this room and I'm like, my son would be in this little fucking thing, you know,
yeah,
and he'd be right there and Frankie'd come over and, you know, we'd write songs, you know, it was great. So
great singer. He's great talent. I mean, that sucks, you know, that is the business, but that is the business that, you know, once, you know, it's over and you don't get the call. Did anybody give you any grief that you go, hey, you know, I just told him, I had to tell him straight. Did you get any grief about that or?
Not really, because it's like everyone, you know, there's no advantage to not telling them. They just don't want to deal with it really.
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants to deliver bad news like that, you know? So we, and then I think then we did the same thing with Corey Taylor from Slipknot. And we actually ended up recording like 9 songs with him. But then that didn't work out. And we're, you know, there's always someone that's like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know, and there's always a couple guys like, dude, that's a guy, you know, and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, they got the girls going over here. Look at that. The girls are in there talking. It's funny when you say, because my buddy who I got the gig to play with Dee Dee Ramone, Christian, he plays with Corey Stone Snow now. Christian Martucci. You know Christian Martucci?
Yeah, dude. When Christian was playing with Todd Youth and
Chelsea Smiles with Carl, who plays in Mike Monroe's band now.
But they were called something else right before that, because I remember that was the name they had, and Jeff Redding. Jeff
Redding. Oh, I know what they were called because they had a keyboard player that Todd Youth told me a story how they left him. He was a keyboard. He was you know who I'm talking about? This keyboard player. I forgot his name, and they were saying, "Oh, yo, kid, that guy is not." I just thought you to go, "Yo, kid."
An imitation of Ricky Mahler is the same as Todd.
It's all, yeah. Yo, kid.
It's Todd had the shady, like the
yo, kid.
You always have to look like.
Yeah. Todd was a funny guy. He go to his bass player Johnny Martin. He goes, "Yo, look at the hat today." I mean, in his hair. Look at
you know, kid. You got all this
such funny stories. I mean, you know, but Christian and Todd had that band, and there was one song I remember having this demo, and there was this one song that Christian sang on, and he was just so fucking, his voice was so it was so badass. I tried to get him in Velvet Revolver because, I mean, I brought that demo into the band. Really?
Yeah, and fucking said, you know, this guy's awesome. And I don't remember what happened, but I really like that guy's voice.
You know, it's funny you mentioned with Christian. So with Christian, I got him in the Dee Dee's band, and he hates when I tell this story, but we were working telemarketing and all that stuff, and he was waiting at a bus stop, and an actor picked him up at the bus stop. And then the next day he calls me up. He goes, "Yeah, man." And I was like, I just got this, you know, Christian's a lot younger than us. And he's like, "Yeah, you know, this actor, he goes out with Cameron Diaz." And I'm like, "What?" And I go, he goes, "Yeah, Jared Leto." I go, dude, that guy is not going to do nothing. I go, he's an actor. What are you? I go, I'm going to get you Dee Dee Ramone, who wrote the songs. We could be in this band. I'm putting the band together. What's wrong with you? "Oh, well, you know, yeah." The next day, I'm going to quit. I'm going to tell Jared I'm not doing the band. They wanted to make him an equal member. Turn the page later, that band becomes huge. He could have been an equal member. And then Christian goes, "Yeah, man, you really did." And he like was so mad.
Yeah.
But Brent Fitz, who plays now with Slash, Turns, when they were looking for the other guitar player after Bobby was out, I go, Christian, go try out for and then he was trying to get that gig and he almost got it, but he didn't get it. But it worked out because he fits best with Corey and those guys. You know, look at this guy. Look at this. I got this guy calling. I'm talking to you. I don't pick up to that guy. But I ended up you know, it's a funny story how things work out for everybody.
Yeah, I jammed with those guys too, 30 Seconds of Mars, because I was friends with Shannon, Jared's brother.
Oh, really?
Shannon a lot. And I remember Shannon and Jared lived in a house together, and they had a garage, and they would jam in this garage. And the bass player was this guy, Jeff. Can't remember Jeff's last name.
It was in West Hollywood, the house, right? Is that the house somewhere? That's where Christian went.
Near Highland.
Yeah, exactly.
And Melrose. And so I was hanging out with Shannon a lot. And we had this mutual friend, Paul Hughes, and all three of us would hang out. And he was telling me like, oh, dude, I'm going to start a band with my brother. And I was like, oh, cool. And he was like, yeah, you should come jam. And I jammed with them a couple times, and it just felt weird. And his brother's, you know, he's a little weird.
Yeah. It didn't
cool,
go.
I don't know. He's just a little, he's like hard to get to, you know, it always feels like you're being kept a little bit at arm's length. It just somehow the way he interacts, it always felt a little like,
yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. They weren't into me or whatever. So
it didn't work out. Yeah, I mean, Christian goes, oh, I don't want to tell them that. I go, it's a funny story. Tell it, Christian, how you almost had success and I ruined it for you. Good. Yeah. I like the story. It's great. I'm the Dave. You'll love being my friend. I get everybody fired. Derek Sherinian in Dream Theater. I went to see that crappy show, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, oh, look at me. I go. Because I went with Eric saying, I go, where are you? I go, it's like a shadow. I go, you need to make it sexy. Go get lava lamps, and he did it. And the prog rock, and they go, what do you? And they end up getting out of the band after me. You know, I'm the idol maker. These are true stories. You know,
love that movie.
Oh, it's great. But now, okay, so now Velvet Revolver, you got this, because after Velvet Revolver, everybody's doing more like these jam bands all over the place, you know, and everybody these all-star Camp Freddy type things, and we were doing the Glam Nation thing, and you know, it's like, you know, everybody's doing the hustle because people now are paying the all-star people, all of us jamming. But you got into doing soundtracks, and I didn't know this, but now I know it. You wrote the theme song or co-wrote for Sons of Anarchy. Is this true?
Yeah.
That's big. Right here. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. You like how I did that?
Yeah, dude.
And you were in Sons of Anarchy?
Yeah, that was at Opie's wedding.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I look like I'm asleep.
I like the picture. You like how I squeezed it in the TV?
How can you fall asleep in the middle of shooting? I was, you know, it was like that time when we were looking for a singer. We're trying to find someone, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm doing okay, you know, money-wise, because I'd saved all my money. So I wasn't freaking out like, you know, how am I going to pay my rent? But I did the month after we fired Scott, I had my first kid. I had my first kid, my son, and he was super colicky, and he was crying all the time, and really difficult. And you know, I was like, what am I gonna do? You know, if I'm a hired guy, that means the only time I'm gonna make money is when I'm gone. You know, I've got this, you know, my first kid. I don't want to just be gone all the time making money. And I was like, maybe I'm going to try and be a producer or a composer. And two close friends of mine were, one was Josh Abraham, who produced our first record. I had known since I was 16, and or maybe I was a little older. He was a band guy that became a producer. So I called him and I'm like, how did you make the transition from band guy to producer? And then my other friend, who was my best friend since I was 11, was this guy, John O'Brien. He was a composer, but he was a band guy. And I was like, how did you make the transition from band guy to composer? And really both of them had the same advice. And they were like, you just got to commit. You got to commit mentally. You can't have one foot in, oh, I'll take that gig, or I'm open for this gig, and I'll do anything over here, but I also want to try and do this. And I remember I really kind of tried to do that. And I was really kind of leaning a little more towards the composing thing. and I was with Brian Ray and Scott again, and this guy Bob Thiel, and we were all at Johnny Rockets again. And he said to me, we were all talking, you know, and you know, just 4 musicians sitting around bullshitting, eating cheeseburgers. And he's like, you know, dude, I just got this gig as a composer and music supervisor for this show. It's called Sons of Anarchy, and we all kind of rolled our eyes like, that's a dumb name, you know, and like, and he's like, no, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be like, because it hadn't started filming or anything yet. He said, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be like The Sopranos meets the Hells Angels, and we're like, oh, that sounds cool. And we just started talking about music, and I was like, oh, you should get bands like Monster Magnet and Clutch, and you know, I just started throwing out all these band names. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And he said, you know, if you ever want to write anything, you should come to my studio and let's write something. And I said, oh, okay. My default is to say no out of fear that I'm going to be the worst musician in the room. You know what I mean? Like, that's how my brain is wired. And I've learned over the years to just tell that to be quiet and then just take the contrary action and say, okay, you know? And so I did. And I went over there and I had this riff that I had written with Shooter Jennings in mind, because Shooter and I were playing a little bit at the time. Very cool. I had that riff, that main, and I brought it over and I was like, oh, I got this riff, you know, and he was like, oh, that's cool. And then we just started writing the song, and we wrote the whole theme song that day. You know, we wrote like it was like a 30-second or a 1-minute version, and Bob sang on it, and we wrote the lyrics together, and we just, you know, he's like, what about this melody? I was like, oh, that's cool. And like, what if you go like here? And I played bass, I played guitar, and you know, yeah, he had a little room like this, even smaller, and we just re-demoed the whole thing. And then we tried to get other people to sing on it. Like, we tried to get Shooter, and we tried to get the guy from Fuel and all these different people, and no one, it just didn't sound right. And then Bob had this guy, Curtis Steigers, and he sang on it, and we were like, oh, this is fucking, who's the guy who ended up singing on the actual version. We're like, this is fucking killer. And that was it, dude. That's how I got my start into composing. And then we got nominated for an Emmy, and you know, I was with CAA because of the band, and I was like, hey, I want to do this composing thing, and I just got nominated for an Emmy, and you know, I should go off this momentum, and that's how it started, you know.
Wow.
And then it was crazy.
I love the song. When I was looking, I'm like, oh my God, he wrote this song. So I'm like kind of fanboying out about it, because look, you got look, Mitch Weiss and Curtis is great. Look, they're getting all the comments here, right here.
Yeah,
People love Shooter. I love it. I like I like when you guys go crazy in the chat over there. You know, but I mean, do you ever sit back and you watch the reruns just to listen to yourself? Go, that was my. Where were you when you came to the riff? What were you doing? Was it just noodling? How did it come up? The riff. What happened? Shooter Jennings had come out with this record called The Wolf. That's fucking, oh, thanks, Laura. For any listeners out there, obviously you guys like music. There's Shooter Jennings, The Wolf. It's one of my favorite records. And that guy is so talented. And so on this record, the first song on the record is called This Old Wheel. And it's almost like a country rap song. Yeah. But it's not super country, but it's just really fucking good, man. And I really love the song. And it talks about like him and his story of coming to LA and having these big dreams of, you know, staring up at the Capitol building and all this stuff. And it's really a fucking great song. And I just loved it. And I remember I was talking with Shooter, and I knew Drea. He was going out with Drea at the time. And I was just like, dude, I want to write some songs together. And so he and I ended up doing some acoustic things together, and here and there we were talking a lot. And I wrote that riff for him because we were talking about, you know, we weren't really talking like, hey, let's do something. And actually I tried to get him in Velvet Revolver,
before.
Oh, Shooter. I remember when he was jamming with those guys.
He jammed with us at the
benefit
circus or whatever it's called, circus, that place off of Santa Monica. And
I know what you're talking about. I remember he did like
in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
We played before Velvet Revolver, and I played with those guys, and Shooter sang Paradise City.
I remember that, yes.
And then I tried to get Shooter in the band a couple of times, and I don't know why he said no. I've heard different versions, but
he did a great, and it's funny because you can't picture him doing that from if you listen to his music, but he did a great version of it.
Yeah.
He really did.
Awesome, dude. I mean, he can really, some of those records, like the run he did after the Wolf called Black Ribbons, there's some fucking amazing songs on there. And totally different from the record before, He did
a great job on Duff's record too. He did a great job, yeah.
Dude, and he just produced Marilyn Manson's record, and then he does, and then before that he did Brandi Carlile, and played with her, playing piano with her on the Grammys when he did that performance. And he's really a fucking prolific guy, songwriter, and really talented. So anyways, that's how that riff came to be.
Wow.
And I just kind of had it in my back pocket for a few months at the time. And then just, it just seemed like it might be the right thing for.
That's it. Just something that you didn't even, now it's legendary.
Yeah. I had no idea, dude. Like, you just never know, and that was, for me, the biggest lesson about that experience was taking the contrary action. It was really more about that than like getting, here or there, doing this or doing that. It's just like just saying yes when my brain tells me to say no out of fear. It's just like, okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. And just, bring the fucking positivity and be like, okay, cool.
Gotta live this life until you die.
Who loves you, baby? We do. We'll see you next week. Mwah. Bam. You're still here. You can't get rid of me. All right. Now get the hell out of here, you crazy kids. But make sure you click on that. I'll see you later.